Hey everyone, Kyle Kopy back here with Dave Gordon, and today we're talking about UFOs, or I guess that's not politically correct to say anymore. I guess the term is UAP. We'll talk about why that is. So get your tinfoil hats out, get the Reynolds wrap out, but actually no, that's incorrect because this stuff is mainstream now for the past couple years, even dating back to the Trump presidency. He alluded to the fact that he knew a lot about what was going on in terms of UFOs. But we have articles that have came out in the New York Times in the past few years. We had an incident just recently with a former U.S. intelligence official, a top official, very credible guy it seems like, who's come forward as a whistleblower and is saying that the government has a secret organization. It's sort of like one of those Russian doll things. It's like an organization within an organization within an organization that is reportedly covering up the fact that the U.S. or parts of the U.S. government have obtained, crashed UFOs basically. They have the aircrafts, intact ones, non-intact ones. They found bodies, and all of this stuff is being withheld from the U.S. public. It's even being withheld reportedly from Congress. So Dave, your initial thoughts on this new story?
Well, clearly these are demons, at least according to the illustrious Dr. Taylor Marshall. And do we have that clip, Kyle?
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick. So in case you're wondering, Dr. Marshall will illuminate us on what exactly an alien is.
And let me tell you right now what an alien is. An alien is a demon. An alien is a fallen angel. For centuries, for millennia, human beings have known that when you encounter a personage that has intelligence and form, a so-called higher being, that is a spiritual being. If they're good, they're angels. If they're bad, they're demons. They damage you, they haunt you, they hurt you, they possess you. It's very, very bad. It's
all right. So I think that's all we need to hear from Dr. Marshall, because the reason we want to do this story is because, you know, there's an air of credibility at first blush to what this whistleblower, this David Charles Grusch, is saying. Again, top government guy, top intelligence official, and he's essentially saying that the United States government has indeed recovered alien craft and even alien bodies. Of course, I don't believe it. You know, I'm a skeptic. First of all, looking at his manner, his mannerisms, he seems like a con man. And then also because his story doesn't add up. We'll get to that in a second. But what I want to avoid for Catholics, and this is where the Protestant influence on Catholicism has gotten really disgusting, because we've gotten very anti-science in a lot of regards. You know, people are insisting against guys like Pius XII, who said you can believe in the evolution of the body, not the evolution of the soul. And of course, you have to believe that we came from, you know, one set of first parents. You have to believe in monogenism. But within that framework, you can believe in the evolution of the body. And it seems more and more likely that that is the method that God used to create at least the physical component of the human being. He allowed the earth to develop. You know, he set everything in motion. He had it planned from the beginning, but he allowed the earth to develop, over a long period of time, what looks like 4.6 billion years. And, you know, the universe is about 14 billion years old. That said, you know, there's been a lot of rejection of that as more Protestants have come into the faith and have kind of brought their fideism with them. Faith is good, fideism isn't. And there's too much of a tendency to say every scientific phenomenon that we encounter that's a little bit challenging, that would take some skill, some deftness to integrate within the Christian framework, it's all from the devil. It's all false. It's diabolical doctrine. And I think that's really pernicious. I think it's not good. It's turning off our minds. You know, I don't believe in aliens. Let me say that. I don't think aliens exist. And I believe in that because of science, because of actually statistics and mathematics. There's something called the Fermi paradox, where we have 200 billion trillion stars out there, and the fact that we have not encountered yet, or at least have no reliable indicia that we've encountered intelligent life from another solar system, from another galaxy, or what have you. The mathematical odds of there being other intelligent life in this universe that we cannot detect is very, very small, actually. So it seems overwhelmingly likely that there would be no other intelligent life in this universe. That said, if there were to be intelligent life in this universe, I think it's absolutely asinine to just be like, well, they're demons. And I worry that too many Catholics are going to just throw their hands up and be like, well, they're demons, obviously. Now, that's not to say that there can't be demons, and that demons can't be taking physical form to destroy people's faith, to attack people's faith in some way. But that doesn't mean that every manifestation of something that seems extraterrestrial is in fact a demon. And for a guy like Marshall to say that, he's just playing to his audience. That's a conclusory, bald statement. It's irresponsible. There's no proof behind it. It's not an argument. It's just a statement that's way beyond his pay grade. It's way beyond him to know or understand. And he's saying these things from, just behind his computer camera. He has no special expertise to contradict, astronomers and biologists who would say, this is something that could be. There is something to the fact that the universe is a very large place. Again, 200 billion trillion stars. That's a lot of stars. That's a lot of solar systems. That's a lot of places that could be inhabitable. To just be like, anything that comes from outside our solar system that has intelligence is a demon is stupid. That said, taking this full circle, this David Charles Grusch guy, he's attempting to expose that the United States government is in possession of alien craft. The question before us is like, is this believable? Kyle, what do you think? What are your thoughts at the outset here?
Well, I would say first back up and add to your critique of Marshall in that he says something to the effect of, we know. He's almost like claiming the church has actually said this. Like, we know that when there is a higher intelligence, it has to be a demon. Like, that's basically what he said in that video. It's like, no, we don't know that, because there's things like not just the fallen angels, which what he is referring to as demons, but there's actually good angels here. So not all other intelligences, not all higher intelligences are demonic. So it's just non sequitur there. I don't know where he's getting that from at all.
Well, dude, all these guys want to go farther than the church and make you feel like a bad Catholic if you disagree with them. Like, if I'm just a son of the church, I can believe everything within the range that the church permits me to believe. If the church said, these are demons, then I'm a faithful son of the church in every capacity, in every regard. Then of course I'd go along with Holy Mother Church and make it a matter of faith. But the fact is, the church doesn't foreclose on this. So we have the influx of Protestant nags who haven't officially come out of the they've officially come out of the Protestant church, but they still have some remnants of the errant fideism, the errant anti-scientific bent that have not been expelled, and they're bringing that with them. And I resent it. I resent people telling me that, oh, you're a bad Catholic because you believe in theistic evolution. No, I took evolutionary biology, and I started off as a bioengineering major in college. I'm pretty sure that evolution happened. Whales have vestigial leg bones. If you look at the skeletal structure of a modern whale, there's the vestiges of legs that they had. And even in human beings, you have an appendix, you have tonsils. These are vestigial organs that really don't provide any service today. And we can examine the fossil record, and there are species from long ago that no longer exist, that show that the Earth is a really old place. It's not like 6,000 years old. You can carbon date fossils. You can carbon date rocks. You can look at the sediments and the layers of rocks in the Earth, and you can estimate how old certain things are with a pretty a good amount of confidence. And these things add up to an older Earth. So, but I get told, oh, you're a bad Catholic by some of the nags, even though the church has specifically allowed that we believe in theistic evolution as long as we accept that we came from a set of first parents, one set of first parents, which I believe. So I think these are all related things. And I just don't like that people are they're saying more than what the church says.
Yeah, there's almost like a scientific hermeneutic of continuity that needs to be maintained. It's like, yeah, you could allow for the possibility of alien life forms, which you do. I mean, it sounds like, just by listening to your take on it, is that you say it's probably not the case. It's probably not the case that there's alien life forms out there because of all the, the stats and stuff that you talked about.
The Fermi paradox is really strong and is really hard to answer, dude.
Yeah.
And by the way, and we can get into this in a second, but like some of the answers to the Fermi paradox are actually at odds with what guys like David Charles Grusch are saying. Like, one of the answers would be like, they're just so advanced they're not detectable, but like, I guess they're not that advanced because they're crashing their stuff all over our planet. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, which is weird. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. It's like, why haven't they just went to CNN or Fox News or something like that, appeared as an alien and said, hey, we're here. We're so advanced. But yeah, we can get into that. But yeah, I mean, basically, yeah, to summarize what I think your position is, it's like, probably, in terms of probability, no. Probably they don't exist, but you're still allowing for the possibility, which is a good middle ground, I think, to take, and it's in line with everything that the church allows. And people are overstepping their bounds. They've become their own magisterium and said, we have all these influences from Protestantism, from wherever, that have colored our narrative on it, and we're going to become dogmatic and say this is the absolute way to think about it. Oh, aliens are demons, clear cut because so-and-so said so. And you haven't really studied what the church has to say on this at all.
Yeah. Truth can't contradict truth. The truths of the faith and scientific truths will always be assimilable. They will always be able to coexist, because what's true and that we know from a natural perspective can't be contradicted by what we know from a supernatural perspective. There can never be any true contradiction there. Reason is a path to knowledge, and revelation is a path to knowledge. They're both paths to truth, and they cannot contradict one another. And you have to have faith that that's the case. Our God is a reasonable God. He is the eternal Logos. So it's never bad to follow science and be like, okay, what is science telling us about the divine mind, about the Creator? And that's why the Vatican has things like an observatory. The Vatican has long encouraged things like astronomy to know the mind of God by studying the canvas of a painter, and God being the unmoved painter. So we can know the mind of God. If there were other intelligent beings, then perhaps they've had an incarnation too. Perhaps they have not yet fallen into sin, which is why their intellects are not clouded and darkened, and why they might be capable of things more advanced than us. There's nothing there that is inherently at odds with the Christian faith. It's not revealed to us. Kind of like what happens to animals. Do our pets, resurface in the new creation? Or, they're going to be animals in the new creation, but is it just new animals? It's not revealed to us. Man does not know. So, not everything, what the Bible is concerned with is telling us about our eternal destiny and about our salvation through the life of and passion and death of Jesus Christ. It's not concerned with giving us a blueprint of the universe.
Yeah, I think that when we deny at least the possibility of extraterrestrial life, when we do that, we sort of we attempt to limit the creative power of God, and even the redemptive power of God, if indeed there was some sort of original sin type of situation that was involved with those other extraterrestrial beings. But even if they didn't have that, they would still need something to bring them closer to God. Let's say the fall never happened for humanity. Adam and Eve would have still had to have some act of God to bring them out of the garden, because that wasn't their eternal destiny. God would have still have to have done something, even if they wouldn't have sinned, that would have brought them into beatitude.
I believe, I think it's Aquinas says they would have been assumed into heaven eventually at the end of their earthly like trial period, testing period. All beings that are destined for beatitude have to go through testing, and so the angels, theirs was right away. It was a fundamental decision: choose for God or kind of for Lucifer, and for mankind, it was there was going to be a temporal trial, and obviously we didn't do too well on that.
We never do
Yeah.
too well. We're not. We tend to drop the ball a lot. But let's get back to David Grusch here. So we had the question earlier. You posed the question of, is this guy credible? And I know you have some doubts about that. My take on it is this. I mean, I'm not saying one side or the other. I believe this guy. I don't believe this guy. But I'm saying that there's at least something there where I can take him, at least to some degree, seriously, just looking at his background. He is a decorated combat officer, served in Afghanistan. After that, he served in a couple different government organizations. He was an envoy, a representative to Congress from what's called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Organization Institute. It's an apparatus of the government, obviously. You talk about the bureaucracy, and it's like layers upon layers and branches upon branches. It's kind of mind-numbing. But yeah, he was part of this UAP thing, which is what the term, because UFO, that acronym, has kind of got a bad rap now. It's like you hear UFO, and it's like, oh, we're going to discredit those guys right away. So the government comes up with its own acronyms: Unidentified Aerial or Anomalous Phenomena, and that's UAP. So when you hear UAP in these conversations, it means UFO. It's the same thing. So he was an envoy to Congress in that regard. After that, he served for the National Geospace Intelligence Agency, also specializing in UFOs. And he just recently left in terms of his governmental positions, I think back in April. And he says he left because of all the stuff that he found out, not only about the existence of extraterrestrials and their craft that have been coming here allegedly for decades, 80 years, but he was more so concerned with the fact that the government wasn't revealing this information to the public. It wasn't revealing this information to Congress even. Back in a couple of years ago, there was something called the National Defense Act, I believe. Marco Rubio, Kirsten Gillibrand, I think were two of the congressional leaders who signed on for this and got it pushed through. And it basically allowed for, or sort of prohibited, or at least tries to prohibit, whistleblowers who come forward who want to disclose information about UFOs to Congress. It's trying to protect them from retaliation and retribution, which is exactly what David Grusch said he's been experiencing for the past couple of years. He's been trying to tell Congress about this stuff, trying to go forward with this information, but he's, from whoever, is facing retaliation of some sort.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that'll be interesting to see if that's actually the case, or maybe he's a disgruntled worker where things aren't exactly going well. And then this whole, like, I'm going to concoct a story and come forward as a so-called whistleblower, when really, it was just that I wasn't performing up to snuff, or, things went bad between me and my boss, and things soured at the workplace. A lot of times there's a backstory. Even if you go and look at somebody like Abby Johnson, we're told she had this big old conversion, she was doing abortions, then all of a sudden, the light clicked on and she just didn't want to do it anymore, and she found God. And the story is a lot different and it's been exposed by a couple Texas newspapers, where it's like, well, she was getting written up at the workplace, and she was getting negative performance evaluations, and then she was in debt, apparently, and there had been lewd talk about males with a coworker that was going on, and then conveniently she comes out as a whistleblower to all the plaudits from the right. I'm deeply skeptical of people, and I find that sort of situation is much more reasonable and likely than this guy's story. actually. That, the government knows about aliens. They've recovered bodies. He says they've recovered bodies, and he's sure we're not alone in the universe. And they've recovered vehicles, and we're reverse engineering the vehicles. This has been going on for 80 years or so. But it's always the government that gets the vehicles and the bodies. It's never the citizens, where it's like a citizen with a camera that can snap a quick photo of an alien for the biggest scientific discovery in the history of the world. It's never that. It's always the government. It's always they're withholding this information from us. I'm a fan of Occam's razor. I think the simplest explanation mathematically, it's a law of mathematics that the simplest explanation is most likely to be the correct one, is most likely to be the true one. I think the simplest explanation is that this guy, maybe he's acting on some tips he's received, and he actually has heard uncorroborated tips of that have been floating around for 60 years, since Roswell, that the government has secret little green men. And maybe things weren't going well at work, and he decided to come out as a whistleblower and, roll the dice and see if he can't get a book deal from all this, and, become an instant celebrity, go on Joe Rogan and make the rounds doing interviews and whatnot. And be like a little folk hero where everyone can be like, oh, he has this secret Gnostic knowledge, and he's taking it to us against the corrupt government. See, we always are keen on believing that the whistleblowers, they're the good guys. The ones that are saying the thing that is out of the norm, they're the good guys. And it's always the machine that's the evil, corrupt one. And the one guy who's blowing the whistle or coming forward with hidden information, he's the one that's saving us from the big evil machine. But a lot of the times it's the individual that's coming out against the big machine that's in fact the bad guy, who's trying to sell his book for a very cynical reason. He wants profit. He wants enrichment. There's charlatans all over the place. There's con men that have, been littered throughout the populace for the history of the world. So I very much believe in charlatans and con men. And I've got to say, from his delivery of, yes, I know we're not alone in the universe, the smirk he has, it just seems like a con man. That's my gut impression. And then his story does not add up. I don't think the story adds up at all. So I don't buy this. I could buy this if it's true, and if there's more corroborating evidence. Again, I'm not theologically opposed to it. Would it pose some theological difficulties if we were not alone in this universe and there were other intelligent beings with agency capable of choosing good and evil? Sure, it would pose some issues that could ultimately, I think, be overcome. But it's nothing that is foreclosed upon that I could not believe. It's just, in this set of circumstances, do I believe it? Do I think this guy's telling the truth? Do the facts add up in his favor? And I say Occam's razor goes, I think it's much more likely that an individual guy is making up a story to profit by it than that the government, which is incompetent and can't even run a cash for clunkers program or, Veterans Affairs properly, that it has been secretly recovering vehicles without leaks, without having this get out, without having, one photo snapped by a disgruntled employee that's covertly leaked to the New York Times or something like that. Remember, we can get a president's tax returns illegally and leak them to a paper. I'm sure we can get a picture of an alien and leak it to a paper, and that the whole world would be so grateful that we're coming forward with this information that you're going to have some insulation against prosecution even if you do get found out as the source of the leak, yada yada yada. I think that is much more likely. It's much more likely that we have a cynical con man than the government has been keeping this secret successfully for 80 years, that they've been recovering alien bodies. And there's more to that, but that's the fundamental thing. I think this breaks down to Occam's razor. And beyond that, his demeanor suggests con man to me. His demeanor suggests charlatan to me. Yeah, there's other stuff, but what do you think of that, Kyle?
It could very well be the case that he is a charlatan, that he's just trying to make money off this, or he's just a disgruntled employee trying to get back at whoever in his former workplace. I don't know. And then the just for the folks out there, you're referring to his demeanor in the one interview which I'm aware of that he's given so far. I don't think he's done any other on-camera interviews, and that was with News Nation. So it's about a 10-minute interview. You can go look that up if you want to watch it. And yeah, he does kind of have that weird kind of quirkiness about him, where it's like, if I was to meet this guy in the street and he was trying to sell me something, would I actually buy it? I don't know. Or those could have been just the clips they clipped out of that interview, because he does seem, pretty cogent in the interview about other things. But yeah, you do get that weird little tinge of, your BS meter going off of, take that as you will. But I'm really just, sort of impressed with the credentials here. I would oppose these two guys, like if you take someone like Grusch, and then you take someone like Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar was this self-proclaimed physicist. He's gained a lot of popularity over the decades, but especially recently he's been on Joe Rogan once or twice, and kind of has some more fame from that now. Some documentaries have been made about him, but he's this guy who's supposedly a physicist, claims he went to MIT. There's no record of his educational stuff anywhere. And he claims he was tapped by the government. He was taken to Area 51. He was shown all these crafts and, tried to figure out how, because he's such a brilliant physicist, he had to figure out how they, would reverse engineer it and how their technology works. I mean, the guy, for the most part, has been discredited, but there's people out there still listening to him. But he's been thoroughly vetted, or anti-vetted, if you will, as opposed to a guy like Grusch. Now, this is early on. We haven't been able to have all these different organizations investigating Grusch as there should be, checking on his credentials, work history, blah blah blah, all that stuff. But as far as we know now, no one in the government has said boo about him being a disgruntled employee, or like he doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, it seems, for all intents and purposes, as far as the original story came out in the Debrief media outlet, News Nation as well, says they really did their homework, fact checking this guy, checking on his credentials. And so it seems to be, he is what he says he is. He's worked not just in the government, but specifically with UFO stuff for the government. And again, his credentials. But we do have to say that the stuff he's saying is all secondhand information. Grusch has never been to a crash site. He's never physically seen an alien body or physically been in a room where there's an alien craft. All of this is given to him secondhand. And this is one of the other things that we could be skeptical about. All of this is given to him secondhand by other employees of the intelligence agency and of the military. A lot of people, Grusch says, have come to him and confided in him and said, hey, look, there's this secret organization within the government that's seemingly not accountable to anyone, Congress or whoever, any other oversight committee, that's just sort of doing their own thing clandestinely, and it's not reporting to anyone. And so they're confiding in him to get this information out. Now, you talk to other people about Grusch. You talk to other military commanders. You talk to other people in the intelligence agency. And independently, those people have come forward and said, hey, yeah, we pat this guy on the back for his bravery, and we're going to corroborate what he's saying. So there's been no one coming forward that said, hey, this guy's a quack. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So I think that's telling. I mean, that says something. I think
he's got maybe a reputation among certain peers. But a lot of times it takes time for the full story to trickle out, to filter out. And, whether he is on bad terms with, the government, with the United States government, with the intelligence agencies, with certain people in the intelligence agencies, that would take time to trickle out. And a lot of times, because of, maybe even legal liability for disclosing confidential employment information, it does take a while. And they can't just be like, oh no, he's being investigated for this right now. He is under, suspicion for doing this. He was having problems with his supervisor. he was behaving in an untoward way. A lot of times that takes a while to, again, come out. And if you look, again, at the Abby Johnson conversion story, I think, there's legitimate questions there. And that comes out after the fact. Sometimes it takes investigative journalism to bring that stuff forward and to really bring it into the public eye. We're reacting, within a week of this news dropping. Sometimes we're just hamstrung by the time it takes for a story to develop and ripen. The fact is, of course, he's going to have buddies that vouch for him within the intelligence community. If you go to work and you work in a place for a long time, you develop workplace friends and connections, and they're generally not going to throw you under the bus. They're not just going to be like, yeah, he's a terrible guy. You have a relationship with a lot of your coworkers that means something. So I'm not surprised, even if he does turn out to be a charlatan or a quack, that he has people vouching for him. Do you remember, like, Super Shadow? Were you ever a Star Wars fan by any chance?
Yeah, but I don't remember. I'm not like a inside baseball guy. Who's Super Shadow?
Super Shadow was a guy that he said he knew George Lucas, and that Lucas had given him, like, the script and the plot of the prequel movies and the sequel movies to the original trilogy, and he would, like, give spoilers, and he'd go online and, like, blog about what things were going to be about and what characters were going to be about. And it turns out he was just making all of it up, and this went on for years. He had a really big following. He just was making everything up, and George Lucas, like, denied knowing him, and it came out that he was just, like, a straight liar. So people do just make things up. The whole point of this story is that people make things up so they get a following and they enrich themselves. And I take everything. I'm skeptical about everything. And I think that's the way to be. Like, if somebody's saying something that is bizarre, that doesn't pass the smell test, that doesn't add up, that's basically everything I would assume that somebody who is like a UFO wonk would say based on the past stories. The idea that government is storing little green men is not a new idea. And there have been whispers of this for years and years and years. Roswell, for example, there are people that swear they've seen the bodies of aliens at Roswell. And those stories have never added up. They've never been corroborated by any meaningful evidence. It's always just been a bunch of hoopla, a bunch of ado about nothing. And I have no doubt that there are whispers of that out there. And maybe he's heard that some of these uncorroborated rumors, and he's just parroting those and taking them way too seriously. Or perhaps, again, he's a charlatan, but the fact is he's saying we're reverse engineering the technology. And this is where it's like, well, let's connect the dots. Let's see if this adds up. These people our government is reverse engineering alien technology that, we can assume would allow intergalactic travel. So really advanced stuff. Maybe being able to travel beyond the speed of light. Things that defy, like, general relativity and everything we know about physics. We would have to assume maybe they can create wormholes. They know about, like, antimatter, and that they can create tunnels through space. Something just really stuff that's beyond what we understand about physics right now. That is way beyond our capacity to channel that technology. So we've found craft capable of interstellar travel, and yet we're still on 5th generation American aircraft that are using jet technology from the Korean War. What giant breakthroughs in avionics have we seen? What non-linear breakthroughs in avionics have we seen since the jet engine was invented? Has our space program done any better? We're still losing Mars rovers that were strapping, like, giant rockets on space shuttles to get them out of our atmosphere. Very crude if you look at it compared with what you would need for something like interstellar travel. No giant non-linear breakthroughs have been made. The gaps that we see from, say, like an F-18 to an F-22, it's all very linear. We have first generation aircraft, second generation aircraft, third generation aircraft, fourth generation, and then fifth generation. And there haven't been any just drastic breakthroughs. Like, we have now airplanes that can just defy the laws of physics as we once knew them. The way that we see those pill-shaped UFOs defying physics on the F-18 Super Hornet cameras that came out, a year ago or so. It's not like we now have aircraft that can harness whatever supposed technology that was, that are like manned aircraft. We don't have something like that. We haven't had breakthroughs. So if we're reverse engineering craft, if we're supposedly in possession of craft that we're reverse engineering to make super elaborate and advanced aircraft or spacecraft, like, we're not doing well with them. We're not getting anything from it. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, as far as we know. But you're talking about some military usage, but some commercial usage too. I mean, the stuff that's going to be used commercially is always going to be a trickle down from what's going to initially get introduced in the military. And the military, I think, has a strong sense of, we want to keep this stuff secret from our enemies. And so, it goes back to we don't have it as far as we know. Perhaps the military has things that we don't know about, that we're not privy to as, in terms of the public. I mean, you got to think that it wasn't until the 1980s that the military acknowledged that, yeah, we have a stealth bomber program going on, but that was going on long before that. So it's no wonder that if this were the case, that they would keep something like this a secret, and maybe they have craft that can do that. We're just not aware of it because of issues of national security.
I mean, it's generally harder to keep a full-scale, like, aircraft development operation completely secret. We are aware of, the B-2, the F-117, the F-22, like, highly advanced aircraft, and whatever the successor for the B-2 coming out is. And even, like, if you look at, like, SR-71, which was, like, a stealth spy plane, super fast stealth spy plane, I mean, that was supposed to be somewhat secret, but, like, I've seen them at air shows and stuff. As far as, it just seems too difficult to keep a complete new technology secret. We'd have American pilots that are tasked with flying them. We'd see them over airspace. You get a glimpse of jets or military copters flying. It's really hard to keep the existence of a whole new technology completely secret. And it's not like we found them like 5 years ago. We found alien craft 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and then started reverse engineering it and made big breakthroughs. They say we've been doing this for 80 years. So, like, from 80 years, you're telling me that, like, in the World War II era, we were recovering alien craft and getting super advanced technology from them, and we've just kept it hidden for 80 years? Again, there have been no giant leaps forward in our aviation technology, in our space technology. We're basically still just using giant rockets to get us out of the atmosphere, and the propulsion mechanisms haven't advanced. The maneuvering mechanisms have not advanced. We're still really rudimentary in terms of spacecraft and flight. So, whether or not I just don't see it as plausible that the government has some hyper advanced program where we can, like, break the speed of light, but we're just not doing it. I just don't find that to be plausible, believable. But beyond that, we have alien bodies. Produce a picture. This could all end if we just produced a picture. Like, why would the government even want to keep that secret from us? It's not like the American public is going to hear, we have found an alien body, and then everyone's just going to start looting and, like, lighting their cities on fire. Like, oh no, they should be like, oh, that's really interesting. What's it like? Can we learn anything from them? How do we assimilate this with Christian theology? Those would be questions I wouldn't start, like, blowing things up and not being a decent citizen. What motive would the government have for keeping this from us for so long? Why would they do that? Why would they choose to do that? It doesn't make sense. We just take for granted that if the government found aliens, they would have to keep it from us. They would have to keep it for not just one president, but we got presidents going all the way back to what? FDR? Eisenhower? And all of them have come to the same conclusion. We must keep it from the American public. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they ask Trump about this? Wasn't Trump asked about the alien thing? I mean, he's rogue enough and not beholden to the political machine enough where I think he would have just been out with it and been like, yeah, there's aliens or something. I think Americans deserve to know. That's where you do want somebody who's going to be just like candid with you. I just don't see it as being plausible. If they had aliens, then it seems likely that they would just be like, yeah, we have an alien body. Here's the picture. Or some whistleblower would have been like, this is the greatest scientific discovery in the history of the world. Here's a picture of an alien. It's always grainy images of UFOs that could be anything in the world that are inexplicable, and there's never a picture of an alien body. Like, I'm very skeptical.
Yeah, I think if the government was keeping this from us, I could see that argument holding more water in terms of keeping it from a bygone era. You know, my great-grandparents would have probably been more freaked out about the fact that if aliens exist and they found out that they did exist, they'd probably freak out about that more. So I could see in bygone eras the incentive for the government to say, oh, people would freak out and riot or whatever. But in terms of contemporary society, it's like we've been so inundated with cultural things, movies, and things like that. If you ask the normal man on the street today, what he thinks about aliens, he's like, yeah, they might exist, blah, blah, blah. I've seen all the movies, and it's kind of old hat at this point for modern man to consider or even be, freaked out about, aliens. It's like everyone just kind of accepts it at this point, or just doesn't care, or is like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, no one's going to freak out about it, like you said. But yeah, we're going to close up in a little bit. I wanted to ask you about, okay, so let's say this stuff does exist. They do have the crafts, they have the bodies. Would the government then have an ethical responsibility to tell the public, kind of like what Grusch is claiming? He's saying that, these other branches of the military and intelligence agency don't know about it. Congress doesn't know about it, and academia doesn't know about it either. Think about what a great thing that they could do for studying all this. But let's say hypothetically Grusch is right, or he's telling the truth rather. Would the government have a responsibility to tell the public?
Yeah, I think so. The government is not here to shield us from truth. The government is here to keep us, to protect our life, liberty, and property, and to uphold public morals. It's not here to, censor scientific discoveries or to shield people from truth because the government doesn't think the people deserve to know the truth or can handle the truth. That's not why we've elected representatives. That's not why we elect our presidents. It would be a complete breach of public trust and public confidence and undermine the very underpinnings of government itself if they were keeping this from us. Then we enter into a master-slave relationship where we have government overlords withholding truth from us and treating us like serfs, treating us like slaves, where there's this class of officials who get to know, and then there's everybody else who doesn't have some right to truth. But the human intellect was created by God to know truth, and it shouldn't be withheld from us. The truth is to be shared, it's to be spread, it's to be apprehended by everybody. Yeah.
Just going back to Grusch for just a second in terms of his credibility. What do you make of the fact that at least he claims to have, just before he left his governmental position, and he says he went to the DOD, he went to the Pentagon, and told them all the information that he was going to disclose to the press, his on-the-record stuff. He's actually testified about this under oath. And he says the Pentagon and the DOD cleared all the info for him to say. What do we make of that?
Well, that's not them affirming that the information is true. That means that they're clearing it, that it's not going to violate national secrecy. If anything, I think that they're saying there's no there there. If it were truly some highly sensitive information that we're reverse engineering certain craft and that we have all these military secrets at play, then they would never sign off on somebody coming forward with this information. The fact they're signing off on this is saying that this isn't like some imminent threat to our military secrets, and therefore, you can bring this forward. You're not in violation of any of your duties, or you're not endangering, the welfare of the American Republic. It's more that. It's not them being like, yeah, this is true. What he's saying is true. It's not an endorsement. They're just saying, this is not going to be something that endangers like American secrets in some way. I think people are misreading that.
Yeah, that's a good distinction for people to make there. Probably a legal distinction that you, as a trained lawyer, would know about more than the general public. So appreciate that answer. And then just lastly, bringing it back full circle around to a Catholic perspective. Let's say, as the years go by, more information comes out, and let's say we have definitive proof of extraterrestrial life. What does that mean for our Catholic faith? Many people out there, I think, would be scared that this would somehow disprove God or disprove the faith or something like that. What would you say to those people?
I mean, and I'm sure you have a good answer for this too, but it's okay. God created the entire cosmos. Number one, yeah, I don't believe there are aliens. I believe the Fermi paradox and the mathematics behind that just show that if there were aliens, with 200 billion trillion stars, and if life were not as unique as it seems to be on Earth, and that life were some kind of quotidian thing where it's bound to develop on any planet given the right conditions, it's not so rare, we would have tons of intelligent life that are leaving radio signatures, around their inhabited planets. So I don't believe there is that. But if there were to be intelligent life elsewhere, the cosmos is big. God, he loves, and from love comes creation. So then one could say that his creative act, his creative mercy, was not just bound up with one race, and he created a multiplicity of races in order to reflect his glory better throughout the cosmos. And perhaps certain races have had an incarnation of the Word of God, the second person of the Holy Trinity, of their own, and perhaps some have not even fallen into sin. There's just nothing that is inherently at odds with Scripture or with Revelation about the idea of God having created many kinds of intelligent beings to inhabit the church, to become members of the church, and to be baptized, and to worship the second person of the Holy Trinity. I mean, that gets a little bit far-fetched, obviously, and we need time to think on it. But that's the initial answer. I don't think that's the case. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, we would basically just be restating what you said, and what I've said previously about, we can't limit God's creative power. I mean, there's nothing in our faith, in the Bible, anywhere that tells us that we are unique in terms of, the entirety of creation. We might be unique, obviously, on our own planet, in our own solar system, in our own galaxy. That may be the case. That may even not be the case. But as far as we know, we are pretty unique, us humans living on the planet called Earth. But I mean, we don't know what else is out there, and it shouldn't shake your faith at all to know that God could and would. He's a creative God. Create something else. And that other thing, even if it's a higher intelligence, even if it's a higher life form, you don't have to automatically assume that thing created you. I think that's where a lot of people go with this. They see movies like Prometheus and things like that, and it's like, oh, human beings came from the fact that aliens came here millions of years ago and dropped some kind of seed in our primordial soup, and they created us. Even if that was the case, which I'm not saying it is, that other higher intelligent race would have to have had its own creator. You still get the same philosophical problems that we have when it comes to the creation of man or anything else in terms of matter itself. So,
yeah, abiogenesis is not likely. Getting life from non-life is incredibly unlikely, and I don't think it's possible absent, the supernatural. They can't do it. They can't recreate it in the lab. They've tried, even in the limited successes they've had in producing like organic molecules from inorganic, the system that they created that out of didn't really accurately reflect the early Earth. So even when they can make organic molecules, which are not life, by the way, it's in a completely contrived manner that doesn't reflect reality of like the primordial Earth. So abiogenesis is nothing short of a miracle, and I just don't think it can happen, in the universe without God. Certainly, the scientific process, I don't think, can just do this all over the place in the universe. I just think it's a ridiculous notion.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we're just about at our time limit, so we want to thank everyone out there for watching, for listening. Please support this channel on Patreon. The link is below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And once again, we thank you and look forward to talking to you next time. God bless.